of introduction to Rodolfo, he's responsible for a lot of the back channel here in Ubud in terms of creating community. In fact, the Bali community bulletin boards on Facebook are all under Rodolfo's management. He's really a community networker. You may not know that about him. He's been somewhat invisible here in Bali and doing that activity. And although he's been silent, he hasn't been withdrawn. You can always get a hug from Rodolfo. And he'll interact with his mini iPad if you really want to engage him. But tonight we get the privilege of hearing his voice. So we'll see if his voice is working.
Curious, I think, is the character of the beginner's heart. Curious not in the sense of how expectations are fulfilled or how people might react, for that's the mind. But rather curious of the moment, of what might come up. My commitment tonight, and what I would like to do for you tonight, is to sing a song, a melody, that is more than verses, but is rather resonant chords being plucked from the heart. And as I do that, most if not all of what I say will be coming straight from the heart, not from my mind. I've noted a couple little points over the weeks of what I wanted to share, but other than that, all of this will be new to me as it's new to you. And that's important because it keeps me curious too. And if I'm going to give you a talk on the beginner's heart, I need to be there. So a couple things about this talk. This is going to be more than just me lecturing to you. I want this to be a journey between us all. As I just said, I don't know where we're going to go. All I know is where we're starting from and where I hope we end, which is in the heart. So as we progress, as questions are asked, as answers are given, as exploration happens, come with me. See what comes up in your own body, in your own mind, in your own heart. And let's just see what manifests, what gets to express. Another characteristic of the beginner's heart gratitude. And I have amazing gratitude right now. I'm actually on the verge of tears, holding it back because of this showing of support, of awesome community. Thank you. And I'm grateful that I can speak. I'll be very honest with you, these are not my absolute first words today. Today was the first day that I spoke in 6 months. But my first words were to my mother, and this morning via Skype, who I haven't gotten to speak to verbally, vocally, in 6 months. So I called her up, and she didn't know I was calling. She didn't even know I had her phone number. I called her up, and she answers, and she answered in Spanish, "Who is this?" And I said, "It's your son." She goes, "What? Your son? What? I love you." Those were really my first words. And I could hear not just the gasp, but I could hear and feel the resonance of her heart. Because that's what happens when we drop into the beginner's heart, when we get present, when we surprise each other by coming to each other from that place. Is that it automatically drops you in. It takes you out of the mind, which is full of distractions, and it takes you to this place of utter connection. It's the edge of emotion, the beginner's heart. Curious, grateful, surrendered, open. Over these last 6 months, as my mind has quieted down, as the monkey inside started to sit and just peel its banana slowly instead of going, as the mind quieted, what was left were those words: curious, grateful, surrender, beautiful, love, ecstasy, community, connection. The words of complaint, the words of hatred, of disgust, of I can't, of negativity, all these things, they fall away. Because those can only stay if your mind is revolving in them. Your heart doesn't go there. One of the things that I love about giving spiritual talks is that if I pause for a moment and I just look up kind of distant, I'm trying to figure out what to say next. You guys are all thinking, man, he's so wise. Look, he's just like downloading it. Only works in this market. So, as I continue today, because like I said, I really don't know where I'm going. I am ad-libbing, I'm winging it, and I'm playing off of the energy that you all get to give to me. So there will be time for question and answers, definitely, because I know over 6 months enough of you have asked me enough questions that I haven't been able to answer, that maybe you've got them saved up. And before that time, I'm just going to kind of let the moment take me. I'm going to just share whatever comes through. As I said, tonight's about the beginner's heart. It's about connection. And it's about emptying. Because you can't reach the beginner's heart if you're full. You can't get to the beginner's heart if your canvas is already painted on. You can have the most beautiful painting, or you could have a nightmarish painting. Whatever it is, it's just a painting. So I'm going to ask you as we go through this today, is I want you to take whatever your painting is, whatever your definition of life, of love, of connection of heart, whatever that is right now, I want you to take it, scrunch it up into a little ball, put it in your pocket. You can get to it later. Because today we're going to go together into a new definition, into something that's felt, not thought. Are you guys with me?
Yeah.
Awesome. So where do we begin? I suppose we can start just with talking a little bit about being in the present moment. It's one of the things that I've loved about being in silence is that it keeps people on the edge of their seats. I've given a few presentations in silence, and they've been the best attention that I've had. Normally there's a little bit of distraction, people are talking or they're writing or this or that, but when you're in silence and you're up in front of people, they're like, no, he's writing something. Even when I'm around town with my little mini iPad, which I've got a notice about that in a moment, when I'm around town, if I take that out, and normally it's just to write myself a note, everybody's like private. So my life has become very public since I became silent, which is funny. The notice on the iPad. So here's what tonight is for me. It's a few things. First, it's my birthday. It marks 200 days that I have been silent. And it's kind of like when a whale comes up to the surface to breathe some air before going down even deeper. So after tonight, immediately after this talk, the mouth closes again for another 6 months without writing in person. I'll continue to email, Facebook. I run my businesses that way. But in person, conversationally, when I'm in front of you, I don't want to use something in between us. The entire purpose of my going silent was to cultivate a heart expression, a heart language that was beyond spoken words. Now I'm going even deeper so that it's beyond symbols, spoken or written. Because if there's one thing that I have found in these 6 months, it's that if you just become present with one another, look into each other's eyes, smile. You need to smile when you're looking, because otherwise it's creepy. I realize this. If you do this, immediately something deep inside goes and says, speak to me, listen to me, hear me, connect with me. That's the beginner's heart. So tonight is about me getting to celebrate my 33rd birthday. It's about me coming up for a breath of air. And it's about getting to share a message that over these last 6 months just keeps popping up for me, and it's that the heart, beyond anything else, is the most important expression, the most important place of expression that you can have. Not just because it's, the lovey-dovey heart, but because it's pure. The mind, like I said, has all these distractions. It's filled with all this other stuff going on in the world. Even in modern research, they look and they say that the mind is only a receptor. It doesn't actually have nerves that go out to express. So that's why they can do open brain surgery on you. And you don't feel it, there's no pain, because there's no nerves going out of the brain sending signals. Yet we try to communicate and express and connect all the time from the mind. But it's only a receptor. What needs to happen is it comes in here through the five senses, through whatever other areas that you channel in from, and then it comes here, and you don't need to say anything. It's felt. It's known. And when you do that, no interpretation gets in the way. One of the questions that's been asked to me while I've been in silence is, how do I do with girls? And there's a lot of responses to that, some that aren't appropriate for tonight. So the main one is that it actually lets me connect with everybody in a much deeper fashion. There was somebody that I was connecting with a little bit at the beginning of my silence, and we actually had 2 Skype calls for 3 hours in silence, both of us. We typed a little here and there, but most of it was just sitting in each other's presence across the world. It's possible. One of the things that I find that the mind does is that it's always comparing. It actually comes up beautifully in one of the other questions that people always ask me. It's one of 2 questions. They either say, well, but you're writing, is that really silence? And that's already a comparison. They're looking at, well, what other models of silence have I looked at? They're not asking, what's this model of silence that this man here presently is practicing? They're comparing. It's the mind. The other question that's often asked is unimportant because I forgot it. I love getting to just move with the heart because everything's excused. Actually, what's just coming up right now is that I love you guys. I absolutely love every one of you. Each day that I get to come out into town and I'm greeted with hugs, with smiles, sometimes with funny awkward bows, which I go, I'm just silent, I'm not a guru, stop it. But I'm so grateful. To me, community and connection is probably the most important thing. One of the things that Jeremiah mentioned when I was in San Diego, I was a public speaker and I was also the founder of an organization and a center called the Center for Connection. Connecting people, giving a space for it. We didn't have any philosophy or any specific, belief system. It was just, hey, we have a space. Come and connect. And even before that, I think connection has been something that's kind of skated its way through my life. Sometimes in fashions that didn't seem like it was the priority. And this, I think, happens a lot. It's when the mind is interfering through conditioning. When I was much, much younger, probably all the way up through most of high school, actually, I was actually afraid of connection. I was afraid of contact with people. For any of you who have seen my TEDx talk, I talk about this a little bit. Show of hands, who's seen the TEDx talk? Cool, this will be new to most of you. So, I used to be so afraid of contact that I couldn't even touch somebody on the shoulder to move around them. I felt like I was invading their space. And I didn't know at the time that it was because I knew the power of connection. Somewhere deep inside me said, when you connect with somebody, it must be sacred, every time. That means if you're walking down the street and somebody's across the way, your connection to them must be sacred. If you're in an intimate moment with a partner, it must be sacred. If you're on a phone call with a telemarketer, it must be sacred. No matter who, where, what the connection is, make it sacred. And all that means is be present. Because too often we dismiss what's happening in this moment because we're comparing. Because we're in the mind going, no, that's not what I'm interested in right now. I want to go do this or I want to do that. And we miss something so important that might be happening right now. There was a quote that I'll paraphrase because I can't quite remember exactly how it goes, that to live your life and ever not express something that comes up is to have robbed another of what might have changed their life. You don't know what each moment will mean to each other or to yourself unless you become present to it. And this again comes back to what I'm saying is the beginner's heart. It's being curious, present, and grateful for whatever is being presented. Probably the other thing that I found while I've been silent, this was in the first 2 or 3 months, is that when I would communicate with people, especially when I was trying not to use the iPad much, I would say something, and some people, I could do a gesture like, and they'd be like, oh yeah, meet at the yoga barn 6 o'clock for lunch? Okay. I don't know how they got that, but they would. Other people, I could do the most descriptive miming. It would be like the Hall of Fame of charades. And they'd be like, what? No, get your iPad out. And what I found, the reason that was, is because of where they were connecting with me from. If they were connecting from the mind, they had a hard time figuring out what I was saying. The moment they dropped into their heart, they got it like that. Sometimes I wouldn't even need to speak. I've played with a lot of things in these 6 months, some of it being telepathy, even cloud bursting. Have you guys ever seen Men Who Stare at Goats? Remember that scene where George Clooney's like, he's trying to burst the cloud? It's real. One, I can say it's real, the idea of that kind of a section in the military from the movie, because that's what I was in. I was PSYOP, psychological operations. And we did sort of that kind of stuff. And because I've been practicing in silence this intention of connection, this intention of moving what's within me out into the world without having to speak it through symbols, I found that doing stuff like bursting clouds is very possible. The funny thing about it is that it doesn't come from the mind, because I started doing that at the beginning. At first I was like clenching my brow and going, nothing was happening. And then I started incorporating it into another practice. I would meditate first, I'd do some Qigong, I'd do a little yoga, and then I'd get up and just kind of go, and I'd look up at a little puff of cloud and just have this intention. And I wouldn't think with my mind, but I would just sit there and I'd start to feel this resonance in my heart. And all of a sudden, the cloud would be like, and I would be like, oh, nobody was here. But the ego's the only one that wants to know that people see it. That's the mind. And what it reminded me of, actually, and I think that this cartoon was totally on it way back when. How many of you used to see the Care Bears? Yeah. Care Bear stare? And they lived in clouds. Uh-huh. Telling you. So the most miraculous things are possible when you just drop in. When you come into this place of the beginner's heart. I'm not saying the mind is not useful. It's here for a very good purpose. One is to receive knowledge, to receive expression from others, but not to interpret it, not to express it. It is only here to receive it and send it right here. I'll put a little disclaimer out. Everything that I say tonight, like I said, it's partly my own opinion, but most of it is totally new. It's just coming out of my mouth. I'm kind of standing aside going, ah. So don't take anything as absolute truth. Just see it as it is in this moment. feel if it applies to you, feel it in your own heart. If it resonates, if it plucks those chords, then live it. Express it yourself. You won't even need to think about it if it actually resonates, because that's the beauty of it. It just resonates. You guys hear voices in your head too? A lot of people have been asking me, when do I talk at night to myself, or, do I have full conversations in my head? And the truth of the matter is, not really. Because I've been able to stay very social with everyone, because I've gotten to satisfy really the only craving that's there, which is why we often talk a lot, either to ourselves or to others, which is connection, heartfelt connection. Because that's fulfilled, I go to bed, I'm peaceful. I go home, I'm on my own, I'm peaceful. There's not much going on up here. That didn't sound right. Told you, just coming out before I can think about it. I'll pause for a moment. Do any of you have questions? And actually, before you ask a question, I want to define what I mean by question, because I said earlier that we're going to be present, we're going to take a journey, and we're going to be in the heart. So I don't want questions that are coming from the mind, and here's the difference. A question of the mind isn't really seeking an answer, it's seeking confirmation. You see, questions of the mind already have a set of answers that apply, and you're looking for the confirmation of one of those. A true question, one that's coming from the heart, is just curious. It's just asking something with absolutely no idea what the response might be, but is curious, absolutely interested in what might come. So if I was to ask you right now, does anybody have a true question? How many of you in your head just now asked, do I? That's a true question. It has no set answer.
I have a question.
Yes.
What senses, physiologically or perception or whatever, what senses got heightened when the voice went away?
Not so much a sense, but patience. Which, when I say patience, I mean the ability of creating space. When you're not filling that space with words, not filling that space with what a friend who's in this room right now called the upgrade game. I absolutely love that. It simply means that you're looking for what's the next step, instead of what's right now, what's actually happening in this moment. When you allow and invite into a space, then all the senses get heightened. That's what being silent has done. I have no idea what that is, but I have a feeling it's birthday cake.
That's the heart.
Yes, there is the heart. It is a child. That is what the heart is. When you look around, especially with the young kids we have here in Ubud and anywhere in the world, there is a curiosity there that has no bounds, especially their parents. The parent, no. And that's beautiful. See, there's laughter everywhere. I love it. Acceptance is probably another thing. the senses are just the five senses. So I'm not really focusing on those because we often say that you shut off one sense and the rest heighten. I don't think that's what's happening. I think you shut off one sense and you open the potential for other things, for awareness, for patience, for acceptance, for surrender. That's a big one. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a conversation, somebody said something, I was like, oh, I've got such a good joke for that. Surrender. Let it go. Or other times where I've typed out like an entire dissertation, and when I'm ready to present it, they've moved on in the conversation. I'm like, delete. And it's okay because I get to realize in those moments, oh, that wasn't that important. I also get to look deeper, and this is where it gets really juicy. When you start to notice where you've been distracted, where you've let your mind be mandating and directing what it is you're doing, rather than your heart, you start noticing that there's something behind the mind that's also doing that. And it's usually an emotion, a feeling, some sense of lack. Something where you thought there was a missing element. And so your mind, because your mind's a servant to you, it's not your master. Your mind is sitting there going, oh, he feels like he's missing something. Let me look. Is it there? Is it there? Is it over there? No. So whenever these little things would happen, like maybe I didn't get to express something, or maybe this was actually the one that really normally triggered me, is if people would come and tell me what they thought I should be practicing, how I should be practicing. And this little thing would be like, when was the last time you practiced a year of silence? And I had to look at that and be like, okay, why does that anger me? And you go deeper and you start to do this introspection. And oh, because I want to feel like what I'm doing has purpose. And then I have to look even deeper. Does it have purpose? Is it a purpose for somebody else, or is it a purpose for me? Where is the purpose? Why is the purpose? Ooh, that's a good word right there. Why? We often focus on what and how. And for any of you who are entrepreneurs, or even if you're working as a service anywhere else, whatever you do, you have a purpose. You have a vision. You have something you want to be giving to the world, sharing that's yours. And normally what stops us from doing that is that we're focused on the what and the how. And so we have this feeling, and it's like, I want to go and hug everybody. I feel so good when I do that. I do, really. And we go, what? And we go, okay, well, hugging. And then the mind goes, okay, well, there's a lot of stuff around that. Like, people might not receive it, or, how do I approach? And that's the how. Maybe I hold up a sign, free hugs. Maybe I put up a website that says free hugs online, and I just have me up there going, all this ridiculous stuff that we start to imagine, and then we take no action. And instead, we do some daily task to keep ourselves busy with this idea that, okay, I'm moving towards what my vision is. I'm moving towards what my passion is and my purpose. I just have to get this and 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 this, and then maybe this over here done before I get there. Something I used to ask my students back in San Diego. When I was in college, I was a religious studies assistant, teacher's assistant. And so I would do these big review sessions, and we'd have like 300 plus people in there. And before I would start the review session, I would ask them this. I'd say, why are you here? Most would answer, well, to do well on the exam. Oh, okay. Why do you want to do well on the exam? So that we pass the class with a good grade. Okay, why do you want a good grade? So we get a good job. Why do you want a good job? So we make a lot of money. Why do you want a lot of money? So that we can eventually retire, have a lot of money, and do the things we love. What do you love? Oh, just chilling with my friends, going surfing, hanging out. If you weren't here at this review session right now, what would you be doing? I'd be chilling with my friends, hanging out, take the shortcut, people. All this other stuff is fluff. All this other stuff is just there because the mind is actually, I'm going to keep referring to this, that the mind is not an enemy. Nothing is an enemy. Everything has a purpose and a reason. The mind is trying to help you because you feel like something's missing. And so it's looking for it for you. So the first thing I'm going to say and offer and invite you to do to drop into that beginner's heart is to realize that you are abundant within yourself. And here's how I'll prove it. When you are looking for that thing, maybe it's through a relationship. And then you get that relationship, and at first you're like, oh, yes, this is what I've been looking for all my life. It's wonderful, beautiful. And you feel so fulfilled. So you recognized something. And then maybe it leaves, and you realize that it's gone, and you feel that despair and that sadness and depression, and you go, oh, something's gone. Again, you recognized something. If you can recognize it, it means that you have it. Otherwise, you can't recognize it. Have you guys ever heard of the historical idea that when Columbus came to the States and they were on the boats, that the Indians couldn't actually see the ships because they didn't know what a ship was. They'd never seen one. It wasn't in their paradigm. So they didn't even see it. That's the same thing with everything else. If it's never been something that you have, and always have within you, you can't recognize it. So when you go out looking with your mind for these things to fulfill your heart, your being, yourself, every time that you recognize it outside of you, it's because it's inside of you. Does that make sense? Yes. Every time that you recognize something outside of you, it's because it's inside of you.